Arthur, a writer seeking solitude, found it in the sprawling embrace of Blackwood Forest. Ancient oaks, gnarled and stoic, stood sentinel along the path. A veil of mist hung heavy, shrouding the woods in an ethereal silence. Arthur ventured deeper, each step carrying him further from the familiar world. He felt a shiver down his spine, a prickle of unease. The forest seemed to watch him, its silence a living presence. Arthur pressed on, drawn by an unseen force. The air grew colder, the scent of damp earth filling his nostrils. He could have sworn he heard a whisper carried on the wind, but when he turned, there was nothing but the rustling leaves. He quickened his pace, a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. The forest held its breath, waiting. Twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and blood orange as Arthur ventured deeper into the heart of Blackwood. The trees loomed closer, their branches intertwining overhead to form a dense, suffocating canopy. The path, barely visible now, snaked ahead like a dark, beckoning finger. Arthur's unease grew with each step, fueled by the whispers of the wind through the leaves. He thought he saw figures lurking in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with an eerie light. A twig snapped underfoot, the sound amplified in the stillness, and Arthur whirled around, his heart pounding against his ribs. But there was nothing there. He was alone, yet the forest seemed to pulse with unseen life. The moon, a sliver of silver in the inky sky, cast long, distorted shadows that danced and writhed around Arthur. He stumbled on, his senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of fear through him. The whispers grew louder, morphing into guttural murmurs that seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves. A shape flickered at the edge of his vision, a fleeting glimpse of white against the dark tapestry of the woods. Arthur froze, his breath catching in his throat. He strained his eyes, but the figure was gone, vanished as quickly as it had appeared. He was losing his grip on reality, the forest's oppressive atmosphere seeping into his mind. Section 4, face to face with fear. Arthur broke into a run, his fear propelling him forward. He didn't know what he was running from, but the urge to escape the suffocating darkness of Blackwood consumed him. The path seemed to stretch endlessly before him, the trees closing in like iron bars. He tripped and fell, his lantern tumbling from his grasp and plunging him into absolute darkness. As he lay there, his heart pounding against his ribs, he felt a cold hand close around his ankle. A scream caught in his throat, his blood turning to ice. He kicked out wildly, scrambling back until his back hit the rough bark of a tree. He looked up, his eyes wide with terror, and saw her. Section 5, a ghastly revelation. Standing before him, bathed in the pale moonlight, was a spectral figure. Her long white gown flowed around her like mist, her face obscured by a veil of darkness. Arthur stared, paralyzed by fear, as she glided towards him, her feet seemingly not touching the ground. The air grew frigid, and Arthur felt a bone-chilling cold seep into his very core. He wanted to scream, to run, but his body refused to obey. The ghostly figure stopped just inches from him, her form shimmering like heat haze. Arthur squeezed his eyes shut, bracing himself for the unknown. But instead of the icy touch he was expecting, he felt a warmth. It was a familiar warmth, one that stirred a distant memory in the back of his mind. Section 6. The forest holds its breath. Arthur opened his eyes. The ghostly figure was gone. He scrambled to his feet, his heart still pounding. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the silence heavier than before. He looked around, searching for any sign of the apparition, but there was nothing. Had it all been a hallucination, a cruel trick of his terrified mind? He picked up his lantern, the metal cold against his trembling hand. As he turned to leave, he noticed something lying on the ground where the ghostly figure had stood. It was a small silver locket engraved with a single word, Eleanor. Arthur's blood ran cold. Eleanor, his wife, dead these past 5 years. The forest held its secrets close, but tonight it had whispered one in his ear, and Arthur wasn't sure he wanted to hear anymore.